I just pressed the button. Are you still hearing me?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I pressed the button and I thought I had done something wrong.
Well, you know what? I guess the only one missing is James, Duke of Marlborough. But although he was very anxious to participate, I haven't had news from him for a couple of days. So I'm not sure he's going to make it. So I guess we should begin. And anyway, if he comes in, we'll let him in. Okay, but we should be beginning like that. Richard?
Okay, sure. Okay. I can give a brief introduction, and then Alejandro can then take it from there for further introductions and the beginning of questions. Yeah.
All right.
Hi, welcome to FRA's Roundtable Insight. This is Richard Bernoulli, CEO of Cedar Gold, with our senior advisor Alejandro Taliavini. Today we have a very interesting show on art and architecture as an asset class, and also how this can relate to sustainability, which we focus on a lot in our firm. We're going to explore this in more detail with some very special guests. Here now to introduce our guest is our senior advisor, Alejandro Taliavini.
Hi, Richard. How are you? How is everybody? Well, today we have very, very interesting people and very, very nice people indeed. We have Princess Diana de Orleans, Prince Pablo su Hohenlohe-Langenburg, there Richard, Earl of Tyrant, and Mr. Julian Walton. Who, each of these people are going to talk about their properties, which are very, very interesting. So let us begin with the only lady we have today, unfortunately, the only lady, with Princess Diana. How are you, Diana?
I'm very well. Good evening to all of you. Thank you so much for inviting me to participate in this very interesting conversation. I'm very happy to be here and to be able to discuss and talk a little bit about my family home. The Caravan Palace has been in my family for over 600 years. It was built by my ancestors in the 14th century. I actually had, let me see if I can actually share my screenshots. Let me see if this will work, or if not at all, we'll just, can you see anything?
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Wonderful. So this is the first time I'm actually managing to share something on Zoom, so bear with me. I hope all of this will go well. So the Caravan Palace has been in my family for 600 years. It is situated in Évora, in Portugal. Évora was nominated Patrimoine de l'Humanité by UNESCO in 1980 because it's a city that is still a fortress. It has a fortress all around. And the palace was built on the ruins of the Moorish castle. And I will show you a photo here of the outside for you to have a better understanding. So we are built on the top of the ruins of the Moorish castle. We have the two towers are medieval, and you will see as right in front of us, because we are in the heart of the city, of the historical city, we have the Roman temple. So this is the entrance to our church, and you have the Roman temple. So Évora, and in the back on the right hand behind the temple, you can see the cathedral, which is medieval. And so our church, I'm very happy to share with you, was nominated the most beautiful private church in the country due to its beauty and collection of tiles. So you can see here a photo of our church. It's her name, she is known or by Igreja dos Loios or Igreja São João Evangelista. It really depends. She has two different names and two different preferences if you see in historical books. And she was built by my ancestor in the 14th century. The tiles that you can see, and what is unique about her is that she is covered with her tiles from top to bottom. The tiles date from the early 18th century. And they represent scenes of the life of the Eloi congregation from Venice. Here I'll show you another image where you can have a closer look of all of our panels of our church. And so what we've done is with all these families where, and I'm sorry, I forgot to mention in the beginning, I'm the 11th Duchess de Caraval, so I'm the 11th generation. And before that, my ancestor who built it was the Count of Olivenza, which is now Spanish. Donc, what we've been doing over the centuries is, like all families, we've had our very grand moments and our less grand moments. And so my father, the 10th Duke de Caraval, who unfortunately passed away in 2001, began the renovation of the church and palace, which needed tremendous work. So we restored the palace itself, the church which had suffered with the earthquake. And so we realized after all this hard work that we had put into it, we decided if we were to keep it closed, what would we really do? Because we don't live full time in the Caravan Palace. So we took the decision of opening a part of it to the public, which we have for the past 15 years. So we've opened the church and the palace itself. And then we thought that, for our visitors, for all of this to be a richer and a more exciting experience, we needed to have, different exhibitions annually. And so one of the exhibitions we did in the church was with a very good friend of ours, my mother's closest friend, Hubert de Givenchy. And so what we did was an haute couture wedding gowns. And we were very fortunate to have dresses lent by the Balenciaga Foundation, La Maison Dior, Yves Saint Laurent, Givenchy, my wedding dress, which was made by Caroline Herrera. We also had Philippe Venet, which was a very well-known designer. So this is one of the last exhibitions we have done in the palace. Here you'll see the exterior. This is one of the gardens. And we always been, for the past 10 years, we've been very focused in contemporary art. So we, of course, have all the historic part that goes with the place and the family. But as well, we're investing a lot on contemporary. So the painting you can see there that we ordered and was painted by the famous South African artist, Esther Malagou. I don't know if you're very familiar with contemporary African art. The Vuitton Foundation had done a beautiful exhibition in Paris. And so we took their curator, André Magnan, which is French, and he's #1 in the world. And he brought us Esther. And the painting you see is the biggest painting she's done in her life. And this lady, just to give you an idea, is 82 years old, does not know how to read and write, and paints with chicken feathers. This painting was made with chicken feathers, and there is not a single ruler involved. And the geometry of her vision is just perfection itself. And she still dresses in her traditional outfits, which include the patterns you see in the painting and the colors. All her village is painted the same way. And so we've worked very closely with her and many other artists that we had. This was an exhibition that we did last year, and we had about 30 different artists from Africa. For this summer, we were meant to have a beautiful exhibition that we've been working on for the past year, my team and I, with the Yves Saint Laurent Foundation. Unfortunately, as you can imagine, with COVID, all of that was postponed for 2022. So we will have an exhibition dedicated to Morocco, fashion, and we always mix music, art, and fashion in the whole lot. And I forgot to mention, of course, that my mother initiated a music festival 20 years ago, which was purely classical. And now we've opened ourselves to world music. So we have artists coming from Asia, India, South America, and it's been a tremendous success. Our visitors have enjoyed that tremendously. We've grown year after year. And of course, let me remind you that all of this is done to preserve the grounds. We are a non-lucrative association. So all money made is reinvested entirely in the renovation of the palace itself or the church. Here I'll show you some images of the inside. This is one of the dining rooms which you can visit in the upstairs part. Some Portuguese paintings. Here is from the other view the same dining room, as you can see. Here you can see a little bit of the mix of what we do with our ancestors and with the contemporary, because we've started mixing more and more. Here we have the Nativity, a painting from the 16th century, and we've put 2 photos on each side from a photographer from Mozambique. His name is Mauro Pinto. And so we have been mixing, and here you can see a part of it. And I forgot to, going back to its architecture, because I think that now we can't just talk about contemporary art and what we've been doing today, but we've been very active for the past 15 years. I must say that this has been a tremendous family effort. We all work together, and we've really made miracles happen, because culture in Portugal isn't easy, but we've done it with a lot of dedication and love, and we've been able to pull it through, and we've had fantastic sponsors with us for so many years. And the Tower of the 5 Shields, which here at the beginning when I showed you the exterior of the house, which is the tower on the left-hand side. When we say 5 shields, it's because it's got 5 corners. It's, I think, in terms of architecture, Professor, if I'm not mistaken, is really, it's one of, I think it's the only one in Europe that there is in terms of architecture. It's got 5 corners instead of 4. And so this tower was where we had Don Fernando, who was accused of treason against the king. And so he was imprisoned into this tower. And his trial happened on the main floor of the palace. And unfortunately enough, he was found guilty and was taken from our palace to the Praça do Giraldo, which is the main plaza, where he was decapitated. We are here, so this was a very sad happening. And then of course we've had some very positive ones. My father, for instance, was the first Duke to come back. He was the 10th generation, because I forgot to mention that the Caravan family, we left in exile for 120 years with the king, Dom Miguel, and so we were absent. And when my father began with the renovations, we were all the different generations of dukes were scattered around the world and buried in different locations. And so in the 70s, early 60s, 70s, when he started the renovations, he brought by boat 30 coffins to be able to reunite the family once and for all, and to bury everyone in the church. So now I can gladly say that this is Le Mausolée de la Famille Cadavala, and this is where all of the dukes and duchesses are buried. We are directly linked to the Portuguese royal family, because we descend from the Braganças. We've had 3 alliances with the Portuguese royal family, and over the centuries, the Cadaval we were very close to the king and to the decisions to be taken. We are direct descendants of the Santo Condestable, which is the famous knight who defended Portugal 3 times when the Spaniards tried to invade us. He was sanctified by the Vatican a few years ago. And so we try to keep our history going and to tell our story and to be able to share with those who are interested and who want to hear a bit of the history and past and the history of Portugal. Well, this is our role. This is what we do with a lot of passion and with a lot of challenges to overcome, which we always did. And we're very happy and proud to be here today.
Well, thank you so much. Amazing presentation. It's beautiful.
Thank you, Alejandro. Thank you very much.
Oh, no, thank you. It was very, very nice. Amazing, really. A very, very nice place, Évora in Portugal. A very nice touristic place. Okay, now we'll go to...
Thank you.
We'll go to Spain to listen to Prince Pablo. Pablo, can you listen to me? Pablo?
We lost Pablo.
We lost Pablo.
Yeah.
Huh?
We may have lost him temporarily, but looks like he's trying to join.
Okay. Well, let's go to Richard. Richard, can you listen to me?
Hello, yes.
Okay, let's go. Richard.
Hi, evening, everyone. Thank you very much for this opportunity to tell you a little bit about my family home, Curramore house in County Waterford, Ireland. I've brought Julian Walton very kindly has joined us, who is more knowledgeable about Carramore and more knowledgeable about history in the Waterford area than anyone I know. So thank you, Julian, for joining us. I'm just going to try and share. I'm just going to try and share something. Hang on a second. Yep. Okay. So.
Yep.
Right.
Showing.
Can everyone see that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So Carramore is the ancestral home of the Marks of Waterford. My father is the current 9th Marks of Waterford, and himself and my mother, the Marchioness of Waterford, they reside here at Carramore. As you can see, there's a substantial estate with a very large courtyard and gardens. But just to go back to the beginning, so you understand the history of my family. So my name is Richard, the Earl of Tyrone. I'm the son of the Marks of Waterford. My family have resided at Carramore in this very spot since about the early 12th century. We have no evidence of showing us exactly when we landed in Ireland, but we believe it's either the end of the 11th or beginning of the 12th century, and we've resided here that whole time. So for over 800 years, my family can trace our lineage and our history right back to then. So we're originally a Norman family, and we were granted lands by King John in the southeast of Ireland. We then sailed the sea with Strongbow and landed in Ireland then. There was a keep erected in Carramore. You can kind of see, if you see the front of the house there, obviously it's been built on and encased in different types of architecture since then, but the one side of the keep of the original wall is actually still there, and you can see it within the house. When you go into the basement, you can see the sloping wall of the side of the keep that was built in the 15th century, because as I'm sure you're aware, in those days the walls were sloped, so when you were throwing things down on your enemies, it'd bounce out and hit them. The keep has its original features still there. There's a secret room and a spiral staircase. This is the front of the house. As you can see, that was kind of the original design was the keep in the front, and then the back side was built on in about the mid 17th century. So some of the bigger works, architectural works at Carramore, were made by the 3rd Marks of Waterford, Henry. He employed James Wyatt, a famous English architect, who supposedly never actually visited Carramore, but it is one of his most profound works in terms of the architecture and technology that was used at that time. So if we just go back a slide, you can see the courtyard there. It's the largest courtyard in Ireland. So it was built over 200 years ago. The original drainage is still there. Really, this was technology before its time. It was so efficient. It still works today perfectly. It's one of the wettest parts of the estate where they actually built the house and the courtyard. But it, as I mentioned, it drains superbly. This is probably the oldest relic we have at Carramore. It's a crystal ball, and I don't know too much about it, so I've written a few notes here. But I think that the myth is, at those times, the myth was that crystal balls were brought back from the Crusades So to own one, to have one in your possession was something quite special. Within Irish folklore especially, they're supposed to have healing powers, and the Carramore crystal ball was supposedly said it could cure murrain in cattle. So they used to put the crystal ball in running water or within the water source that the cattle used to drink out of, and it supposedly cured the murrain, which is a disease of that time, which is quite interesting. But as I said, it's the oldest relic we have, and it dates back to the 15th century.
Wow.
Julian, would you like to take over from here?
Right. Yep, certainly. Can you hear me all right?
Yes,
Yeah.
perfectly well.
Right, okay.
Sorry about that. I'm back. I'm back here. I don't know what happened.
Okay.
The connection is not very stable where I am.
Okay.
Okay. Right.
Julian?
Well, yep, right. Carramore has been, as Richard said, the home and seat of the same family for many centuries. The family was originally called Le Poer, or Power, and it's changed only once in surname when the heiress to Carramore, Catherine Power, who succeeded when she was a small girl, married Sir Marcus Beresford from the other end of the country at Coleraine in Ulster in 1717, an easy date to remember. And this is a huge portrait in the entrance hall at the keep at Carramore. A family historian has said that they seem to be determined to have not only the largest courtyard in Ireland, but the largest family portrait as well. It's painted in about 1760 by the English painter John Astley, and it shows Sir Marcus Beresford, now Earl of Tyrone, his wife, Lady Catherine, who had inherited Carramore, and their surviving children were now adults. And what is remarkable about this portrait to me is that by the end of the 18th century, everyone you see in this portrait either had been a member of the Irish Parliament or was married to one. The three boys had very successful careers. You see Marcus and Catherine, who are seated. To their left is their youngest and perhaps favorite daughter, by the look of her, Lady Betty. And then on her left, in red, is the eldest son, George, who succeeded his father and became the first Marquess of Waterford. So he owned enormous estates, and he sat in the Irish House of Lords. And on his left is his brother, John, who became first Commissioner of the Revenue in Ireland. Very useful thing to be in those days, and probably today as well, I don't know. And he was one of the three most important political figures in Ireland. He was responsible for, among other things, bringing over the architect George Gandon to Ireland, who did a great deal of work in Dublin and put up some of our most beautiful buildings in our capital city. And right to the left of the portrait, you see the youngest boy, William, and he goes into the church and he becomes an archbishop. So between the three boys, they have very illustrious careers. And then the girls, as I said, all married very well. So that is really a sort of vignette of what the Carramore family was like in the late 18th century, the height of the Georgian period in Ireland. Perhaps we could go on to the next slide, Richard. And across the entrance hall from that huge portrait is this one, which to me encapsulates the family as it was 100 years later, in the middle of the 19th century. These are four sons of the fourth Marquess, and the three smallest are too young to have been put into trousers, so they're still wearing skirts. But they are all boys, and they look very happy there, playing with their toys. The eldest boy, who's standing, he becomes the fifth Marquess, and he becomes a captain in the Royal Dragoon Guards, the British Army, had various successes as in horse racing. There's a huge trophy in the inner hall, which he had won. The next boy, the boy who's who's kneeling on one knee. He became an admiral in the Royal Navy, a favorite of King Edward VII until they had a quarrel over a mistress. And he was one of the key people in the imperial period of late Victorian England. He became a hero in the Egyptian campaign of 1882, when he disobeyed orders and sailed close into the forts at Alexandria and silenced one of the forts with his guns. That's Lord Charles Beresford. And the boy on his right, who's playing with bricks, that's William. William joined the army, a very successful career in the army, and he fought in the war against the Zulus in Africa and earned the Victoria Cross by rescuing a wounded soldier who was under attack in a battle. And the smallest of the boys on the left, Marcus, he managed the king's racing stables. So the four of those, while you see them there as small children, looking very meek and mild, they all had very distinguished careers. There was actually a fifth boy who was born much later, Lord Delaval Beresford, and he's the one who got away. He went over to America and he bought a cattle ranch in Mexico, which he ran very successfully. He bought another one in Canada, in Saskatchewan. And one day on a train journey between the two ranches, there was a train crash and he was killed, very sadly. But those five boys really, they show what a varied and vibrant life the Carramore family had. This is a miniature of the third Marquess of Waterford. So early 19th century. He had a reputation for being a real tearaway. He was renowned for his practical jokes. He was also a very keen huntsman. He was master of the Tipperary hounds and later of the Waterford hounds. And he was sorry, Richard, could we go back to that previous image? That's it, yeah. In 1839, he took part in the Eglinton tournament in Scotland, which was a reenactment of a medieval tournament, a very costly affair. And they all wore armor, they had fancy titles, and they jousted with each other. This is him in his Eglinton armor. And here, the Marquis, so famous for his pranks, was conquered not in the jousting, but by the sight of a fair maiden. Could we go forward again and again? This lady, Louisa Stewart, very beautiful, rather shy, and he was captivated by her, proposed marriage to her. They got married. She came to Carramore, and she's one of the most remarkable people in the history of Carramore. She reformed him. He became very respectable. There he is. Yeah, we can go on to him, Richard, if you like. This is a portrait of her husband in later life by Louisa, working at his desk. And she herself was a very gifted painter. She also was involved in various philanthropic works on the estate. She built a cotton factory on one of the little towns, a part of the estate. They both operated relief works during the great potato famine of the 1840s. And then when he was killed in a hunting accident, she retired to the estate that they owned in Northumberland, right up near the border with Scotland. And there she lived for the rest of her life. She became very famous as an artist. And at Carramore, there are about 40 of her paintings. I've showed you this one because it's one of my favorites. It's called The Little Queen, and it shows a painting of 3 children, probably from Ford in Northumberland rather than from Carramore, and they're in fancy dress. And Little Queen is looking very superior and walking along with her train, which is held by 2 other little boys. Very politically incorrect, I'm afraid, because she's white and the 2 little boys have got their faces blacked out. But there you are. That was the way of the times. She traveled a great deal. She wrote home. to her husband, and this is part of one of the letters in which she has a little sketch of this peasant whom she met while out on one of her walks. This was written from what was then Mentone, now Menton. It was then part of the Kingdom of Savoy, later became part of France. And she says to him, "You must come to my hotel so that I can draw you." And he turns up, and she does a drawing of him, which she then redid as a painting, which is now in the royal collections at Windsor Castle. So that's Louisa, who's very important in the Carramore story. This is a sketch that she did showing the Waterford hounds. They've chased a fox which has fallen over a cliff, and the hounds have fallen over, and they're going down on ropes to try and rescue the hounds. So that's another of her works. On the estate, up on a hill, is the family chapel, Clonagam Church, which has some wonderful monuments of the family. And this is really the most famous. It depicts the first wife of the fifth Marquis, Florence Grosvenor. He married her. It was a real marriage of love. He married her against everybody's wishes. She had been previously married. There was a divorce. There was an elopement. It was awful. And eventually they got married. He brought her back to Carramore, and she died in childbirth. And he employed the Sir Joseph Boehm, one of the royal sculptors, to do this beautiful monument of her, which is in the church on the Carramore estate. We can go on now. What's next, Richard? In the gardens just close to the house is this wonderful shell house. The shell houses were a great fashion in the middle of the 18th century. They were modeled on ancient Roman shell houses, also very popular in the Renaissance, and they're supposed to resemble a marine grotto. So you go in this rather unpretentious looking building, and inside you think you're in a sort of underground cave. It was created by Catherine, the girl who had inherited Carramore in 1754, and this is her statue by John Van Nost in the middle of the shell house, and there's a little plaque, a little scroll that she's holding, which tells us that she erected the shells, put them up with her very own hands in 261 days in the year 1754. Now, the shell house must have taken a long time to build. The shells took a long time to collect, and she doesn't say there were consecutive days, but that's the shell house, which is one of the main attractions of Carramore.
Julian, thank you very, very much. Much appreciated. And just to kind of finish things off, I'd just like to, well, Julian, thank you very much.
Thank you.
But I'd like to please welcome all of you. If you're ever in Ireland, please don't hesitate to get in touch and visit Carramore. There are, many, many interesting things. I think we haven't had much time, so we've only really skimmed the surface. And do please keep an eye out for Louisa Waterford and her works. She is probably one of my favorite ancestors. Unfortunately, she's not a blood relative. We didn't manage to inherit her talents in the family because she was unable to have children. However, she's phenomenal, and she's a very well known artist. But yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard and Julian, very much. It was a great presentation, beautiful, great, very interesting. Now let's go to Spain. Prince Pablo, how are you?
I'm very well indeed. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you.
And I'm very excited to be here in this show. Before I start showing the family houses, I would like to make a little introduction on the history of Spain, and that will make you understand why only a handful of families got to the 20th century with a relevant historical heritage, being a country with thousands of castles and hundreds of historic of noble families. So let me go through the last 600 years in maybe 2 minutes. So during the Middle Ages, when a noble died, the eldest son or firstborn inherited all the lands and fortunes of his father. Behind this, there was probably a military purpose, since nobles provided funding, supplies, and military service to the king during the Spanish reconquest. They needed vast and stable territories to supply and organize the troops, the combat elements. Now, the primogeniture was not necessarily by way of man like it is in other countries. Spain had been in a state of war for many centuries, and that made male mortality extremely high. So to prevent the family lines from becoming extinct, it was agreed that in the event of a lack of a male succession, it should pass through the female route. So since noble families married each other, and due to that enormous male mortality, on many occasions the wife of a duke ended up inheriting the title and properties from her dead brother, another duke. So this situation caused the son to inherit the titles and lands from both families, from the mother and from the father. This was repeated over and over, and as a result of this, the number of noble families was being reduced dramatically, as opposed to what was happening in Europe, where nobility was in full expansion. Now, the result allowed already powerful families gather huge fortunes and vast territories throughout all regions in Spain. And if I may, I'd like to show an image. Let me see now if I know how to do this. May I? Yeah, compartir pantalla. We go to vista previa. Okay. Here we go. Okay, so all these titles are the titles that gathered into one family. So one same family had all these titles around Spain. Precisely, it was my family, but it happened in other families as well. This was an extreme, but it happened in other families that they gathered 30 or 40 titles. So this situation totally changed in the 19th century after the birthrights for the primogeniture were abolished following the Napoleonic Wars, following the Napoleonic Code after the wars. And the already weakened families and castles that were in bad condition or even destroyed after these wars had to be abandoned or sold, as they had to be divided among their heirs. So these divisions that occurred in each generational change pushed my grandmother to save what came to her, which was just a small fraction of what her father inherited from his father. And for this reason, she established the foundation with the aim of conserving, restoring, reintegrating the heritage linked to the house of Medinaceli through time. So let me go to the next picture, which is, let me see. Hold on a second. Okay. The way the foundation works, it's very similar to how the British National Trust manages its properties. That is, those monuments that are in good condition and therefore have visitors and therefore income, not only are able to finance themselves, but also contribute to the maintenance those monuments that, due to the geographical location, a bit out of the way, or the state of conservation, do not obtain visits, and therefore funds to maintain themselves. These are actually right now the 4 monuments that are open to the public, and soon there will be a 5th one, and the ones we're going to talk about. These are the others. Some are not restored and probably won't even be restored. They will remain nice ruins. Some are halfway, and others are in pretty good condition, and soon they will have a use. Shall we start with? Okay, this is Palace of Tavera. It's a 16th century palace. Actually, it was the most important building of the Toledan classical Renaissance style, and one of the most splendid constructions of the period. Initially, it was built as a general hospital during the most lively and cosmopolitan period of the city of Toledo. The architectural highlight, I'm going to cut it short because we have a lot of things to talk about. The architectural highlight of the building are the twin patios, which you can see there, said to be, at the time, one of the most solemn, sober, and complex cloisters of modern architecture. That central gallery, which divides the patio, creates a magnificent sense of space. And the idea of the architect was to direct the eye towards the church, and viewed from other angles, one may appreciate the amazing symmetry and proportions of the arches and columns. Now, heading into the church, we come across the sepulcher, which we see here on the bottom left, the sepulcher of the Cardinal Tavera. It was the last work done by Berruguete. Berruguete was the Spanish Michelangelo. So he died just after having completed this work. He died in the clock tower on the picture on the right, on the upper right, that room over there. He died. Then we see the altarpiece that was designed by El Greco, together with the paintings that were there, or some are still there. And together, he had previously been commissioned to paint a number of pieces, as well as to design a tabernacle, which we see on top, to house his resuscitated Christ, the only sculpture El Greco ever did. You see the little pictures there. These pieces can now be seen in our museum, along with a few other magnificent paintings by El Greco himself, and a number of paintings from the 16th and 17th century, from Luca Giordano, Zurbarán, Pantoja, Rivera, etc. The building, let me go down to the, okay. What we see on top is a pharmacy. This building also houses the oldest pharmacy in Europe. The pharmacy is the only room in the hospital complex that continues to have its original identity in the same place as the architect Covarrubias originally intended. Inside, we find a large collection of items from the 16th and 17th centuries, such as ceramic and glazed earthenware, jars, mortars, spatulas, and particularly this wardrobe, this 17th century polychrome cupboard, whose doors open 16 other small drawers in which the most expensive medicines and gems were kept, such as garnets or emeralds. Now, on the right, we see is the crypt. It's a circular space with a vaulted or domed, I think it's called dome, no? Domed roof that serves as a family pantheon for the Mainatelli family since the end of the 19th century. My ancestors, grandmother, mother, uncles are buried there. So this building also houses the old hospital archives, that little picture on the left and the center, and the archives of the Ducal House of Mainatelli. This last one contains an impressive collection of documents which go back over 1,000 years. And okay, that was Tavera. Okay, I could go on for hours, but I mean, I'm going to make it short. Pilatos is probably the one most known, is certainly the one most visited, because it's in the center of Sevilla, and Sevilla is a very touristic city, and everybody who goes to Sevilla most probably goes and visits the house. It's one of the most visited monuments in the city. It's a palace known as Casa Pilatos, and was built between the 15th and 16th centuries, and is located in the historical part of Seville's city center. The unusual stylistic diversity of this palace brings together complementary Gothic, Renaissance, Romantic, and also Islamic elements. This house, like many of the civilian domestic homes, has 2 floors with identical floor distribution. The upper one it was used in winter, and the lower one was used in summer. But this one in particular, since the owners of this house were some kind of representatives of the king in Andalusia, in the region, this house was not only his private residence, but it was a public place frequented often by hundreds of people. Therefore, public visits were limited to the lower floor, while the upper floor was strictly private. Let me go and show you this. Okay. To change floors, we go through this staircase in the picture on the top and on the right, which is very interesting because for the first time, a staircase became a monumental element in the city's architecture, dividing the more public space of the patio and the reception rooms, where we can find a recreation of the interiors of the 16th century palace with pieces from the Medinaceli art collection, with period furniture, tapestries, and paintings by Luca Giordano, Giuseppe Recco, Carreño, Miranda, Vanvitelli, and more modern paintings by Goya. A magnificent collection of sculptures was introduced on the 16th century by the Duke of Alcalá during his years as Viceroy of Naples and Sicily. The Duke of Alcalá was mentioned together with great collectors such as Cosimo de' Medici and Cardinal Farnese as one of the top collectors of the time. And after his arrival from Naples back home, the Duke constructed a new palace to exhibit the collection that he had assembled in Naples. This new palace was built around the vegetable garden, the orchard, which he transformed into an archaeological garden, following the model of a late Roman style palace. Those Roman palaces were characterized by superimposed lodges that looked towards the open landscape. Instead, he inverted it and opened the balconies towards the closed garden. Let me show you another photograph. Okay, but you see the bottom photo is that palace, and here you have more pictures of it. And the garden, and as you can see in spring, is magnificent. And you can tell it's really Italian. I mean, except for what was made in the 15th century, the 16th century is totally Italian. Okay, this is Oca is, well, I wouldn't say small, but compared to the others, it's certainly small. It's a small palace located in Galicia. Galicia is in the northwest of Spain. Originally built as a fortress and transformed into a livable home at the beginning of the 18th century. Of the old fortress remains just the front facade and the tower. All the rest, including the churches, is pure Baroque, Baroque style, which we can find all over Galicia. And maybe if any of you have been to Santiago de Compostela, it's the same style. But Oca is famous for its gardens. The original layout of the gardens date back to the 16th century, but most of it was transformed and expanded during the 18th and 19th century. It is one of the best examples of gardening in Galicia, in which we find, there we go, yeah. in which we find an inseparable unity of water, stone, and vegetation that makes this monument a masterpiece of architecture, engineering, and garden design. I mention engineering because it is really interesting to see how part of the water from a river near the garden is diverted towards the upper zone of the garden, and very cleverly distributed and controlled through small dams and a number of channels and fountains that provide water to every corner of the garden, as well as to a watermill and a turbine that supply flour and electricity to the house. So while the remaining water is channeled back to the river, so it's a very sustainable house. I'm sure you would like that. Between the house and the orchard, we come across a bridge that divides two ponds. This bridge is called the Bridge of the Virtues and the Vanities, or the Good and the Evil. I can't really remember one of those. So each of the ponds have an artificial stone boat. The upper one being a fishing boat with a fisherman and orange trees. You see it here, the pictures on the top. Orange trees, and there's white swans, and all very positive. Whereas the one on the bottom, the one on the lower pond is a warship with a heraldic monster in the stern of the boat with cannons and acid lemon trees. Each boat represents the good and the evil. And in that small picture on the top, which is it's a bird view from the ponds, you see that on top of it is the church. You can't see it, but on top of it is the church. So it's a bit of a metaphor. So when you cross the bridge, you look at the left, you see the church, as if God was overlooking down at us, checking the decisions we take when crossing the bridge. So we cross the bridge and we go to the real garden. Orca still retains the double character of an ornamental garden and a productive orchard, with which it was born to serve the 18th century ideal of perfect harmony between utility and beauty. This is why in its conservation, special emphasis is placed on taking care that specimens of great botanical value, such as collection of camellias, historic collection of camellias, live together next to other plantations such as kiwis or vineyards, apple trees, or here we go, and alignments of geometric alignments made with box around the vegetable garden. So this is this picture on the top shows the labyrinth. That's interesting because it's inspired by the one at the Canterbury Cathedral. And then next to it is a greenhouse, which is considered to be the oldest greenhouse still in use in Spain. This is a place that you ever go to north of Spain, you must visit because it's a lovely garden, it's a lovely house, so I really invite you to go whenever you want. It's really beautiful. Okay. It looks like a church, but it's not really a church. I mean, it is a church, but it wasn't made as a church. It was designed also in the 16th century. All houses were from the 15th and 16th century. It was designed as a funerary temple for the Universal Secretary of the Emperor Charles V, named Francisco Los Cobos, and is the centerpiece of the declaration of Úbeda as a World Heritage Site by UNESCO in 2002, 3, 4, I can't remember when. The result is a church that is at the height of the best Italian Renaissance architecture that participates in the humanist ambition to put together the classical heritage with that of the Christian world, and an ambition that is also present in its rich iconographic program that we find throughout the whole building, and especially in the facade and in its extraordinary sacristy. Let me go. This is inside. This is an iconography program, and here we find mythological allusions in accordance with the Erasmian tendencies of the circle of the Emperor Charles V. We find the two tenants support the coats in the center. The two tenants support the coats of arms of Francisco Los Cobos, the secretary of the Emperor, on the left, and on the right, Maria Mendoza, his wife, resting on sarcophagi that indicate the funerary character of the monument. Then below is the sacristy, and there's also the ceiling of the sacristy is right here on the bottom right. And the door of the sacristy is a very funny door. It's in the corner. It's very extremely strange to find a door that goes right in the corner. This sacristy is something. So the uniqueness of this sacristy lies in its monumental statuary that fulfills a double function as a supporting element of its architecture and as a support for a complex iconographic program. Úbeda it's funny when in Spanish you want to say that something is in the middle of nowhere, you always say it's in the hills of Úbeda. So because of this, maybe if I have time, I don't know how we're doing with time. Do we have?
Well, a few minutes, but try to.
No, because it's another story. It's about a Michelangelo that was lost for 400 years, and it wasn't the church. Because of Úbeda being in the middle of nowhere, no one thought that this Michelangelo was in this church, and it was destroyed during the Spanish Civil War. And my great-grandfather took the pieces, stuck them in a wooden case, and just left them there with the hope that someone in the future would be able to restore it. And my uncle, the Duke of Segorbe, took that box to the Lupificio delle Piedre Dure in Florence and just left it there. So to make this story short, they realized it was the lost Michelangelo. And so what we see on the right, obviously not all the pieces are there, only like 30 or 40% of the original are there. So they made this model with nylon and the existing pieces with the hope that in the future the other original pieces will appear and complete the statue. So it's an interesting story. I'm sorry I didn't have much more time. I could go on, but I understand there's no more time now.
Well, great presentation. Thank you. Hello, Richard Bonugli?
Yes.
Okay, we're running out of time. Anyone wants to add anything else? Richard Bonugli?
Sure. I just wanted to thank everybody for this great and wonderful and very interesting presentation on the art and architecture collections. It's been fascinating, and it also is very interesting from our perspective. We look after like the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Lots happening here. We've seen a lot of examples on sustainability, inclusivity, the engineering part of it, the environment part of it, all aspects of those goals. So that's fantastic. And I just want to thank you individually. Thank you very much, Princess Diana, Prince Pablo, Mr. Julian Walton, and Richard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. It was so impressive.
I invite you all to come over and visit anytime.
Great.
Just let me know. Through Alejandro.
Thank you so much. Yes, thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye, Diane.
Bye. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for inviting me, and you're most welcome. If you ever do come to Portugal, please do come and visit us. We'd be delighted to have you. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you.
Not in summer. Edinburgh is so hot in summer.
It's best in the spring or autumn in the
No,
autumn.
but it is beautiful. I had dinner on a summer night. I had dinner at the patio of your palace, and it was beautiful. And
Oh,
great food.
I'm happy to hear that. Oh, well, you must come back, Alejandro.
Yeah, I will. Thank you.
Because we're renovating. Now that we're talking about renovation, we're redoing all of our gardens by Louis Benesch, the French paysagiste, and we're redoing the restaurant by Jacques Range. So we're very excited. That will be concluded in 2 months. We'll be done with that.
Okay, great.
Thank
Send
you.
my
Yeah,
greetings
say
to
hello to Charles Philippe.
I will, Pablo. Thank you so much.
Sir Philippe, please.
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Okay, bye-bye, everyone.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye, everyone.
Bye.